And then next up, we have one of our frequent visitors to our sessions, and oh, I think I'm going to turn the spotlight. This is a new thing. Did everybody notice how I made Netta a spotlight? It's a new tool. Next up, we have Professor Raymond Chiu, who has been really helpful and active with the Center for Pedagogical Innovation and talking about a lot of these as we make this transition. So, and so thank you to Raymond, and you can, do you have something to share, or should I make you our spotlight speaker?
I can share my slides.
Okay, great.
Okay, here we go. So Julia is definitely right that I have been gleaning quite a bit from CPI of late, especially since in the summer, I was faced with the task of having to teach 140 international students when most of the other instructors, or many of the other instructors, didn't have to teach during the summer. So the challenge and the questions with regard to this topic, engagement, were quite top of mind at that time. And it kind of sounds like a Hollywood movie, and your worst fears may come true because, you know, we may see engagement as following a certain set of rules, or perhaps a married at first sight, cold turkey kind of thing. But very much, you know, it's a engagement process for the instructor, him or herself, to be able to discern what to do in whatever situation. And so I employed a number of tools to address various problems, which I'm sure many of you faced. Many of my ideas came from CPI, so I have them to thank for that. But some of the actual challenges were identified by students themselves when I did a survey at the beginning of this spring. Writing exams, or some of them, the internet speed. So the bar corresponds to the text below it. Distractions and group projects, interestingly, was one of the highest concerns. And so these were some of the concerns that I broke up into 8 categories. The learning curve of the online format, which is completely new, getting students into the material so that they can stay motivated, the reduced interaction as well as the depth, which people relied on the class interaction for. The lack of critical thinking, perhaps, from the more virtual format and the associated quality of learning. The impersonal aspect of the technology, not being known deeply. Group separation and coordination, of course, is a big problem. And then other challenges that I identified was being able to continuously improve the mode of delivery. And there were some really good ideas that were presented earlier today, which is great. And then also enhancing the value of the online tools themselves. And so just going to go quickly through 8 different modes of engagement. It's going to be a bit of a scattered thing, but we can always talk more about specific ideas later. So with regard to online engagement, I knew right from the beginning that I had a challenge in ramping everyone up in terms of the technology they're using, how they're even going to get into the class, how they're going to join the class, how they're going to join breakouts, what the lecture format's going to be, how they're going to do verbal participation. Because verbal participation, as you know, in the online format is very slow, and online classes take a lot longer, how we're going to incorporate written participation at the same time. And of course, etiquette and privacy issues are important as well. So I had to lay all of this out at the beginning and also go over this at the beginning of the class in order to help people to be engaged right away. Being engaged with the content is also a challenge because with the proliferation of tools and the fact that we're separated from the lecture hall environment, the print textbook becomes even more obsolete. But of course, many of us are very dependent on that. And so I had seriously considered and decided to go with the learning management system at Cengage that was integrated with the textbook so that I could annotate parts of the textbook. I could add in my own media, whether it's slides, videos, etc. I could actually lecture from the textbook so that when they go home and they're cramming for their exam or reviewing, hopefully they're reviewing, they are going back into the interface that they are already familiar with because I just went through it with them. And so part of that as well was having access to all their tools, which included a number of assessments, self-assessments, 2 tests. They have flashcard activities, video quiz, as well as a definitional matching activity. So these were available for students as well, and I would give them 2 of these, 2 or 3 of them per week to get them prepared for each lecture. They also have videos that allowed me to tackle the most, I would say the most serious challenge of business education was the fact that undergraduate students do not have the work experience to be able to imagine the concepts that they're being taught. And so having access to those videos was also quite important. Now, in terms of interactive engagement, of course, there's many different types, but I think the particular challenge with courses is that because you have this chat format and all these sort of scattered modes of interaction, the collateral damage is that the depth is compromised. We really actually want to help people to engage at a deeper level, not a more superficial level. And so really making Sakai forums intentional during the class, asking them to answer very difficult questions. So giving them 5 minutes during the class to answer questions, and basically the whole discussion plan is integrated into the lecture and into the slides, as well as the group work. And then they have a permanent record of the things that people said and also the group work contributions that people made. Another area, just going one step further from interactive engagement, is critical engagement. So being able to also engage in critical thinking and the writing associated with that in the online format. And here's our very own Jeffrey Boggs from geography, I believe. And this in the fall term 4, Brock professors piloted the Critic platform. And the main thing about that, I think the owners would be thrilled that I'm presenting this, but I'm not giving an unqualified recommendation here, but I think it's just an example of how we're struggling to provide not only more interaction in the class, but interaction between students in this format where they basically, they're emphasizing not just the application and understanding stages of Bloom's taxonomy, they are doing evaluation, analysis, and creation, mainly of other people's work. And so they would do their own creation, but then they would also evaluate 3, 4, or 5 other people's creation. And then the original creator would rate the evaluations of their peers. And so it's kind of an iterative, a reciprocal process in which there's interaction back and forth, but also higher order skills are practiced and gained in the process of examining other people's work. And then the scores are given for all components of that process. And so it also helped to force me to make very, very structured the assessments that they were asked to do. So I had to break down and chunk out the various, almost at a sentence or a paragraph level, what am I looking for in this paragraph, in the second, the third, and fourth paragraph, and then the rubric corresponds to that as well. And it also facilitates the evaluators to understand what they're looking for and how they should evaluate. So it's a low stress, fairly straightforward process. Group engagement, of course, is important. Some of the ideas I got from CPI was to ensure that there is progressive submissions. And one main objective I really try to aim for is not to make the overall assessment dependent on any one member. And so the group assessment consists of each member posting something that is a component of the whole, that contributes to the whole, but is not dependent on other people's work. And getting other group members on board and coordinated is probably the biggest anxiety I think that students have in the online environment. And so if they're delinquent students, I have an alternate submission for them to make. Of course, it is penalized, and then all of this goes into the forum so that students can interact with each other's submissions, and also, obviously instructors can look at it as well. Personal engagement, I had to tackle. I did this before the pandemic hit. I worked with Brock International Services, knowing that there's 140 students coming on board, and also knowing that historically only half of them participate in class. Half the class doesn't say a word for the entire term, and that's a problem. And so we spent a number of weeks, Kelsey, Jennifer, and myself, developing this workshop, which introduced types of thinking, understanding cultural difference and how that relates to communication, and also the participation process, giving tips. But we also made it very practical in the sense that we gave 3 opportunities for reflection and interaction in breakout groups, so people could get to know the instructor, could get to know the marker graders, and very personal questions like looking at your childhood, what is something you considered fun? Another one is what caused you to choose the career you've chosen? If you could be someone important, like a superhero, who would you choose to be? And the students really enjoy just being able to get comfortable with the instructor, but as well they get practical guidance as to how to start their participation, the verbal participation. So I would consult international services for that information, because I'm sharing this, I guess. Because of their contributions, you may want to connect with them first before you use any of this material. Collaborative engagement, of course, is being able to improve using student feedback. So I have a get to know you survey at the beginning of the course, as well as a mid-course survey to get feedback on how to improve. Here's some responses showing that the usefulness of Critic compared with their other courses is a lot more useful, or somewhat more useful. Also, the usefulness of MindTap, the LMS, is either a much better experience or a slightly better experience than conventional, I guess, textbook and slide deck lecturing. And also, of course, asking what they want to get out of the course and telling me about themselves. Interestingly, I had almost 90% response. People are very eager to tell, share them, build a relationship with the instructor. And I also had to tackle very practical things such as, what time zone are you in? A very important thing to know from the point of view of engagement. And then finally, vendor engagement can take place by just getting involved, offering feedback to your vendors. So I did it for both Critic, the owner of Critic, I have a very close relationship with, as well as the content developer for Cengage. And as a result, I get, discounts for the subscriptions. I get about at least 10% free subscriptions to help people in financial need. I've actually been invited to come on contract with Cengage, actually, to provide feedback over the term. And I'm going to put that back into hopefully I can find a way to get it back into my PER so I can hire RAs. If you're skeptical about that, I already did that actually for a case award on women in management. I put the whole, I guess, $1,500 into my PER, but also giving students a voice. So hopefully in the future, I will also survey them specifically about the tools, and then offer that, of course, with full disclosure to the publisher so that they can improve the tools. So this is really just a scattering of ideas, but all the best in your own engagement endeavors, and I'm looking forward to the further discussion.
Thanks, Raymond. I think